Shalom, everyone. We are in the period of the counting of the omer, and we only have, as I'm speaking, around 2 weeks till the great holiday of Shavous, the great joyous day that celebrates the Jewish people receiving the Torah. And as I indicated in a previous year, the whole idea of counting the omer between Pesach and Shavous is to create a link between the holiday of freedom and the holiday of submission to God, as if they are one long holiday, to teach us that the purpose of freedom is to enable us to serve God. Chazal mentioned that the sacrifice of the omer was barley, which is the food given to animals. The sacrifice of Shavuos is wheat, which is food eaten by humans. And this shows us that freedom without Torah is animal liberation. And only with Torah does it turn to human dignity. But based on that introduction, I'd like to raise the following question. And that is, if the purpose of the counting of the omer is to create a connection between Pesach and Shavuos, why do we start counting the omer only from the second day of Pesach and not from the first? In Parshas Emor, the mitzvah of counting the omer, it tells us, Usvartim lachem mimacharas haShabbos. You shall start counting from the day after Shabbos, from the day that you bring the omer. Now we know that this was a huge machlokas between the Pharisees, who are our sages, our Chazal, and the Sadducees, who did not believe in the oral law, where the Sadducees took the position, and the Karaites do the same thing today, that the word Shabbos means Saturday, and you always start counting the omer from Sunday. That was their position, because they interpret Shabbos to mean Saturday. Our interpretation is that Shabbos refers to the Yom Tov of Pesach, the first day of Pesach, and Mimacharas is the day after that Yom Tov, which would be the second day of Pesach. And if you learn the Mishnah and you learn the Gemara, you see there were many, many different proofs that were brought on both sides of this, and this was a machlokas, this was an argument that lasted for hundreds of years. But the bottom line is, of course, that we start counting the omer the second day of Pesach, no matter what day of the week it is. So the question still remains, if the purpose of the omer count is to join Pesach and Shavuos, join freedom with responsibility and submission to God, then why would it be the case that you start from day 2 and do not start from day 1? So here I want to share with you a beautiful, beautiful mashal, parable that is given by Rav Nachman of Breslov in the name of his great-grandfather, the Baal Shem Tov himself. And that is, the question sometimes presents itself. When a person is new to Judaism, a person is choser b'tshuva, a person was not living a religious life, and then at some points they decide that they want to follow the Torah and develop a relationship with God. And of course, teaching in Ohr Somayach, I am fortunate to be with such people every single day of the year. Often, when a person is a Baal Tshuva, they feel a great inspiration. Every Shabbos is wonderful and vivid. Every Yom Tov is spiritually uplifting. Davening is great. Learning is fantastic. But then, at some point, things become habitual. After you've done it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, decades, etc., one loses their enthusiasm. One no longer feels excited about Torah and mitzvos and spirituality. It becomes a matter of habit. And the question is, why should that be so? Now, you give me a very simple answer, that anything that you do over and over and over and over again becomes habitual. But in fact, it shouldn't be that way with mitzvos. Because if every mitzvah I do and every Torah that I learn brings me closer to God, how could there be diminishing returns? How could it be that the more mitzvos I do, the less passion I have? You can't just explain it by habituation, simply because mitzvot are spiritual realities. How could doing more result in less? It's very disheartening. The more religious I become, the less spiritual is my divine service. That seems perverse. There's something wrong with that picture. So listen to what the Baal Shem Tov says. The Baal Shem Tov says, imagine a baby that's learning how to walk. And initially, when the baby starts crawling and then trying to walk, the parents hold the baby by the shoulders. And the baby takes one step forward and another step forward. And walking seems a lot of fun. And then at some point, the parents let go. And as soon as the parents let go, the baby falls, plop, plop, plop. Now, if the baby could articulate his or her thoughts, the baby might wonder, why was walking so easy 3 minutes ago? And now it's become so hard. As an aside, I just do want to remark one thing, which is also a very important lesson, that we are hardwired from birth to never give up, because no matter how many times a baby will fall while he's trying to walk, he will always get up again. Even crawling, when a baby begins to crawl well before the walking stage, crawling is very difficult. I remember watching my son at 6 months crawling, and he was grunting and moaning. He was going, and I was thinking to myself, why is he working so hard? Let him stay in his crib and play. What is forcing him to go on if the crawling is actually painful? And the answer is, God made us hardwired not to give up, to keep on going, to try to accomplish goals, to crawl instead of being still, and to eventually walk when we're able to walk. And no matter how many times we fail and we fall, we get up again. At some point, as children and certainly as adults, we do give up. We lose our confidence. We lose our sense of resilience. We lose our sense that if first you don't succeed, try again. And in many, many ways, one of our jobs as adults is try to recapture that resilience of the child who never gives up no matter what. That was a little digression, but I think that itself is an important message. But let's go back to the main point here. The main point is that the baby was able to walk so easily a few moments ago when the parents were holding it by its shoulders. And now the baby falls. Why is that so? And the answer is very simple. It was easy to walk when your parents were holding you up. But at some point, the parents let go. So you will internalize the ability to walk and make it your own. And as a result, without that support, your parents are still there to be sure you don't hurt yourself. But by making it your own, it truly becomes part of you. Even though initially there's going to be failures, mistakes, and accidents. Says the Baal Shem Tov, the same thing is true for the Choser B'Teshuvah. When a person is very, very far from God, God will lift them up and give them an artificial high. God is carrying you. So every Shabbos is wonderful. Every davening is inspirational. Every word of Torah is so powerful. God is showing you the riches of his Torah, the beauty of a relationship with him. But it's artificial because you haven't earned it. You haven't made it yours yet. At some point, just like mommy and daddy letting go, God lets go a little bit. God showed you what you can become. It now becomes your job to become it by your effort and your work. And therefore, counterintuitively, Rav Nachman, the Baal Shem Tov, conclude that if one has obstacles in their service of God, it is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of strength. God has confidence in you that he can let go a little bit and you'll keep on going and make it your own. And indeed, just as Abba and Ima are always there to pick you up and protect you, God is always with us, but sometimes in a less visible capacity, because he wants us to kind of make it our own and not just rely on the artificial high. With this general psychological understanding that the struggles we have in life can actually be a sign of strength rather than a sign of regression and failure, we can understand a relationship between Pesach and Shavous. The redemption of Pesach was a kind of highlight experience which we really hadn't earned and we actually didn't deserve. We should have been in Mitzrayim for 400 years. God had to take us out after 210 years because we had reached the 49th level of impurity. Had we stayed another few moments, we would have hit 50, and we would have been irredeemable. As it were, 4/5 of the Jewish people didn't leave Mitzrayim. So the redemption was something we didn't deserve, we didn't earn, we weren't ready for. That's why the Torah emphasizes, b'chipazon, we had to leave Egypt in a hurry. We couldn't even let our dough rise because we would have hit the level number 50. And yet, because of God's love and in the merit of our patriarchs and matriarchs, God showed us miraculous revelations that were far beyond our natural capacity to attain. The 10 plagues, the splitting of the Red Sea. Our Chachamim tell us that even the lowliest maidservants saw at the Red Sea greater prophecies than even the great Navi Yechezkel, who saw the throne of God's divine chariot. So Pesach represents the notion of a sudden revelation of holiness and intimacy in which God carries you beyond your natural capacity to experience the wonders of his relationship. But it's artificial. After God shows you what you can become, he then puts you back to the ground level and says, become it. And thus, unlike Pesach, which is that sudden revelation, the revelation of Shavuot is gradual. 49 days, la'at, la'at, we walk the road, the spiritual road, which is sometimes daunting and sometimes disappointing. And sometimes it's two steps forward and 1 step back. And sometimes it's only 1 step forward and 2 steps back. But we keep on going, la'at, la'at, la'at. This is the opposite of chipazon. The redemption of Pesach was sudden, chipazon, hurriedness. But the revelation of Shavuot is la'at, la'at, level by level by level by level. Pesach shows us what we could become. Omer, culminating in Shavous, is when we actually try to become it. And thus, going back to the original question, this is why the counting of the omer is the day after, because it's a different type of service. Pesach, we become the recipients of God's glory. But now we start a new chapter in our lives, the chapter of earning it. I believe there's a saying that they sometimes imprint on T-shirts. The origin may not be Jewish, but I think the idea is a Jewish idea. What you are is God's gift to you. What you become based on what God gave you is your gift back to God. God gave us many, many gifts. God gave us life. If we were fortunate enough to be Jewish, God gave us our Jewish identity. But what do we do with it? You know, there's a phrase, people often talk about converts or the like as Jews by choice, because they're not Jews by birth. Well, but the truth of the matter is, in an assimilated society where Jews can be anything they want, even if you were born Jewish, you have to be a Jew by choice, meaning nobody is going to be a Jew automatically. You got to choose your Judaism. And that's what you give back to God. Take your talents, take your abilities. Take what you've perceived of the beauty of that relationship and now earn it and make it your own. Because the only things that really count in life are those things that we work for, that we struggle for, that we strive for. And that is what the Omer and Shavous is. The revelations of Pesach were a bit of a freebie. Omer and Shavous is our attempt to earn it and become worthy of those gifts. In Shir HaShirim, in the Song of Songs, which is a romantic story, but it's an allegory and a metaphor for the passionate love that God has for the Jewish people. God, as it were, is the king and the shepherd, and the Jewish people are the princess. So in the beginning of Shir HaShirim, the princess calls out to her lover, Moshcheni acharecha, pull me after you, v'narutza, so we could run. So Rav Shner Zalman, the Baal Tanya, quotes from the Zohar that pull me after you is the holiday of Pesach. Right? Pulling me is like a sack of potatoes. Pesach, we weren't worthy, we weren't ready. God dragged us out of Mitzrayim. But eventually, through the avoda of purifying ourselves for Sfiras HaOmer, Narutza, we can run together. We run with God. So you see the shifting here. We were initially pulled, and then we run together with God. We become partners with God in the creation of Torah, in the observance of Torah, in the relationship of bringing Hashem into the world. So this is something we have to think about. In life, there will always be challenges. In life, there will be times in which we don't always feel all the inspiration. But we have to know that God is whispering in our ears precisely in those moments. I trust you. I believe in you. I have faith in you. Hold on, hold on, hold on. And from those challenges, you will grow greater and you will be closer to me. So, once again, I think that's a very, very important lesson. As we approach the holiday of Shavuos, let us resolve to understand that life does involve work and life does involve effort. But ultimately, that will give our lives meaning, purpose, and joy. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful Yom Tov and a true Kabbalah Satorah B'Ava, acceptance of God's Torah with love. And may we merit with all of Israel to be Ke'ish Echad Uvelev Echad, one person, one heart. So we accept the Torah together. Chag Sameach.
So, my dear friends at Ohr Somayach, we are about to arrive at our destination. We embarked on this journey quite a while ago, about 40 days ago, and we are a week before our final destination. What is that destination? Sinai, Har Sinai. The 49 days of Sfiras HaOmer are a countdown. We embarked on this journey the second day of Pesach. The days of Sfira, 49 steps. It is like a ladder. 49 rungs, and every day we climb one more rung on the ladder. One more step until we arrive the Margalot Har Sinai. So we're almost there. And in just a few days, Shloshet Yemei Hagbala, the final days of preparation, of Achona, to Mamad Har Sinai, to Kabbalah Satorah. And when we speak about Kabbalah Satorah, the most common idea and phrase is Naseh v'nishma. And Chazal exalt the moment when the entire people, ki ish echod ubelev echod, spontaneously cried out, Kol asher dibar Hashem na'aseh v'nishma. What is so special about na'aseh v'nishma? Chazal teach us b'shoshek dimu yisur na'aseh v'nishma. Yardu samach riboy malachi ashores. והלבישו לכל אחד מיסוד שני כסורים, אחד כנגד נעשה ואחד כנגד נשמע. So when the people said nasa before nishma, it is a fundamental appreciation, recognition, acknowledgement that our understanding is limited. We're human. We trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It is an appreciation of the idea of the Navi expresses, Ki gavu shemayim ma'oretz, like the heavens are higher than the earth. Lo machshavosai machshavosechem, velo drochechem drochai, ne'im Hashem. Ken gavu machshavosai machshavosechem. We can never fully understand Kadosh Baruch Hu's ways. And therefore Klal Yisrael cried out, Nasa v'nishma. Whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu requires, whatever He demands, whatever He asks for, we have total trust. This is what we need to do. This is what we want to do, whether we understand or not. And that is what is so special about Higdimu Nasa Nishma. And it wasn't a one-time event. Thousands of years ago, when our forefathers stood at the foot of the mountain, every Jew, every day, in his essence, and whatever he does, is Magdim Nasa Nishma. In Shabbos Peizayin, Chazal tell the story of Rava, one of the greatest Ameron, who was immersed in Torah study. He was learning Be'iyun Rav. He didn't even realize that his fingers are under the bench and they're bleeding, and the Tzedoki sees him. And what does the Tzedoki say? Amu pezisu nekadmisu pumaichu leudnaichu. You are such a strange people. Thousands of years ago, you put your mouth before your ears, and you said Nasa v'nishma. You didn't even know what you're supposed to, what you're taking upon yourself, and you still are the same. The Tzedaki tells Rava, and Rava says, yes, we still are the same. We follow the footsteps of our forefathers. And when I learned Torah, I put HaKadosh Baruch Hu before myself. Anan desaginim b'shleimuso is kayim bantumas yeshorim tanchem. I'm quoting the Lashon of the Gemara. And Rashi explains, Rava tells that Tzedoki, we love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and He loves us. And we are totally confident whatever He wants us to do is to our good, is to our benefit. Kederach ho'osim me'ahava. And that is the essence of Higdimu Nasa Lenishma. But then the question is, why did the angels from above put on the head of each and every individual Shnei Ksorim? Not one crown, but two. Echad keneged Nasa ve'echad keneged Nishma. Hayta rak hagdama achad. If the point is Higdimu Nasa Lenishma, then they deserve one crown. Because Chazal don't say B'shosha Omru Yisrael Nasa V'nishma, the angels dressed them with two crowns. The Lashon of Chazal is B'shosha Higdimu Nasa Lenishma. There was only one Hagdama, two words, but only one Hagdama. So let me share with you an additional thought. Yehi libi sumim b'chukecha. David HaMelech, please, in Tehillim. Chukecha is a Lashon Rabbim. It's plural. So Chazal's interpretation, Yehi libi sumim b'chukecha, chukas HaPesach v'chukas HaPorah. What do the chukos, the laws of Porah Aduma, have in common with the laws of Pesach? They have nothing in common. They are so different. They are two opposites. They are actually contradictory ideas. Chukas HaPesach, we encourage our children to ask questions. We go to great extremes to encourage them to ask. We expect each and every child, the Chochem, the Rosha, the Tam, and even the one that has no questions, we do our best. Ask, talk up, speak your mind. When it comes to Porah Aduma, Rashi explains, Chukas HaTorah, Chukim Chukakti, Gzeres Gesharti, Gezarti, Ve'en Chorishus Lahara Lachareim. Not only we don't have permission to ask, we are not even allowed to think. Ein lachoreshus laharher achareihem. David HaMelech asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please teach me. Please give me the wisdom, the insight to know how to reconcile Chukas HaPesach and Chukas HaPorah. When to ask and when not to ask. When to question and when to accept without questioning. And that is the shleimus of a Jew. Not only the nasa that comes before nishma is so special, is so important, is so holy. The nishma that comes after nisa is also special. Because when nishma becomes before nasa, the translation, the interpretation of nishma is, we want to hear. We cannot perform unless we know what we need to perform. But when you put nishma la'achar nasa, nishma takes a new dimension. It's not only hearing, it's not only listening, it is understanding, appreciating, trying to delve into the depth of every commandment, of every mitzvah, of every facet and every aspect of Avodas Hashem. Not just going through the motions and the actions. Nishma shela achar nasa means far more than hearing and knowing what you need to do. It means understanding why you need to do and what we want to achieve with each and every mitzvah. B'shosh shegdim yisur nasa lenishma. They deserved one crown for the nasa that comes before nishma, an additional crown for the nishma that comes after nasa. So just in another week or so, we will all stand there once again at the foot of the mountain, b'chag Shavous, and once again we will say, Nasa v'nishma. So my dear friends at Ohr Somayach, it's a privilege and a simcha to be part of this holy endeavor, to be part of the Ohr Somayach family. By Kabbalas Torah, we were transformed from individuals, from families, from tribes, to being a people, a nation. B'shosh shehegdimu yisur nasa lenishma, it was not only individual. B'yoyim hazeh nehiyesu la'am l'Hashem Elokecha. When we stood at the foot of the mountain, we stood there as a people, as a nation, as individuals, but not only as individuals. And as a people, we bear responsibility for each other. The Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. And that is the legacy, and that is what Ohr Somayach is all about. That was what drove our great Rosh Yeshiva Zechron Rocha Noter Shela. That was his motivation, that was his drive, the responsibility we bear for each other. As a people, we are one. And oneness, being one, being a people, is primarily about the responsibility we bear for each other. We need to reach out. And as children of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we need to do our utmost to bring each and every one of our brethren back home. Home to Klal Yisrael, home to the Beis Medrash, home to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Have a beautiful Yom Tov, all of you, and we should all have a great Kabbalah Satay.
Hi, this is Peretz Baruch Eichler, a proud alumnus of Ohr Somayach. Now, what you just watched is one of the many programs that Ohr Somayach provides, leaving its impact on hundreds of thousands, with so many more waiting to be reached. Ohr Somayach's Central Campus in Jerusalem has over 300 students presently learning there. And now you can be a vital part of spreading that bounty of knowledge worldwide by logging on to donate.ohr.edu. We can step up to the plate at this pivotal moment of Ohr Somayach's growth and bring the next generation of Jews home.